Did you do that?
Hey, hey, good day, good day. I am praying that this will not only be your mindset, but your blessing, that you know that today was made just for you, and that knowing that, understanding that, hearing that does something to you, that it brings a smile to your face, that it brings peace to your heart, that it brings joy to your being to know that heaven designed this day with you in mind. And that today holds everything that you need to be the best version of yourself for yourself so that you succeed. Let's start the day with some self-love, some self-worth, some self-work, because we have this understanding. We know that we deserve to be the good that we need. Let's go. Let's get into it, because this is not an easy topic, y'all. Today, we are talking about forgiveness. Whew, that can be a challenge. It can be a struggle. And I understand it is a human thing. It is not easy to do, but it is such a gift that we have the opportunity to give ourselves. So let's talk about, how do we get ourselves to the space of forgiving ourselves, forgiving others, so that we can be whole? And for many, many, many reasons, for many factors, for many realities, this can be a challenge for each of us. It is hard, because people are going to people, whether we want them to or not, whether we think it is right or not, whether it makes sense or not. People are going to people. They are going to do things. They are going to say things that inflict hurt or harm or offense. Is going to happen. They're going to strike a nerve. They're going to say something that maybe even causes you to change how you see yourself. But as true as the fact that people are going to people is, the other truth of that is that forgiveness is a gift. It is a gift that we give to ourselves, and it is a choice that allows you to be whole. And as I was sitting with this topic and really trying to understand what the Lord wanted as far as the framing and the explanation, there were some really interesting revelations or realities, however you want to put it, that came to me, that the Lord showed me. And one of the things that he showed me is that there are myths surrounding what we have all either heard or believe about forgiveness. And that was pretty interesting to me when he was showing me that a lot of what people believe about forgiveness is rooted in myth. And then he showed me that unforgiveness is a thief. It is a sneaky little thief, because when you hold unforgiveness in your heart, it steals your joy. It steals your peace. It steals your goodness. It steals your contentment. It steals your vision. And it steals your wholeness. So keep that in your mind, that unforgiveness is a thief, okay? Because I'm going to read to you the list that the Lord showed me about the myths of forgiveness. Forgiveness is not silence. In order to forgive, it doesn't mean that you have to be quiet. As a matter of fact, it's the opposite. You have to speak the truth in order to forgive. Forgiveness is not forgetting. To forgive doesn't mean that you have to forget. as a human being, you are incapable of forgetting something that impresses on your heart, so much so that it changes how you see yourself or how you come to engage and encounter with people. Forgiveness is not forgetting. Forgiveness is not pretending. You don't have to pretend like what happened did not actually happen. You don't have to mask what happened. That's not forgiveness. Forgiveness is not a burden. You are not supposed to forgive and then carry anything away. As a matter of fact, forgiveness is freedom from burdens. Forgiveness is not boundaryless. It is the opposite. In order to truly forgive someone, you have to set boundaries to move forward. Forgiveness is not settling. It doesn't mean that you say, oh, okay, well, I guess that this is just the way that things are going to be from now on. In order to get along with this person, I guess I just have to deal with it. No. That's not forgiveness. Forgiveness is saying, this is what I deserve. This is the truth that I'm standing in, and these are the boundaries that I'm setting. I will not settle for less than what I know I deserve. Forgiveness is not sabotage. Forgiveness is not taking and believing that somehow you have to undermine the value of who you are to make way for somebody else to be who they are. It's not sabotage. Forgiveness is not demanding. Forgiveness does not say you have to do this in order for me to say this and to love you like this. That's not forgiveness. Forgiveness is not diminishing. If you experienced a hurt that was so traumatic at the hands of someone else, forgiving them does not mean that what they did to you was any less wrong or horrible. It is not that. Forgiveness is not dishonorable. Sometimes we listen to the voices of the enemy that say, if you forgive, that means they'll never respect you. They'll never believe that you are who you say you are, or you are who you think you are. Forgiveness is not dishonorable. As a matter of fact, by forgiving, you give yourself the opportunity to honor who you are and what you know you deserve. And forgiveness is not accepting an injustice. Just because you forgive someone doesn't mean that you're saying what they did was okay. Forgiveness opens the door for reciprocity, for a reaping. When you step out of the way and you forgive instead of standing there trying to make things right in your own power, you leave room for the goodness of the Lord to have its full work and measure so that people will reap according to how they have sown. And you don't have anything to do with it because you serve a God. There is a God who crafted your life. And he says, if it is mine to avenge, I will repay. You don't have to worry about justice. I am a God of justice. Don't you worry, just settle. Settle in my rest, sit in my peace, abide in me, and know I'm going to take care of it. That is so powerful. That is the beauty of forgiveness. So let's visualize for a moment. Now that we know the myths of what forgiveness is not, let's visualize. Take a breath. Because I know that those myths were a lot to handle because they permeate everything that we have come to know. That's why it's so easy to think of all of these myths. It's so easy to come up with all of these justifications. And you have the opportunity to be free of that today. Free from the myth to live in the truth. So let's visualize. Okay. Your heart is a net. You got it? Your heart is a net that was made to hold the necessities of life, the good things of life, the truth, the joy, the peace, the love, the comfort, the wholeness, all of that. Your heart was made to hold that. Okay? So now if you think about what happens when you fish with a net, you cast out that net and you drag it. And sometimes when you're dragging that net, fishing, and your life is you fishing, you drag that net and it gets caught on something. Well, if you don't address that snag appropriately, if you just yank at it, or if you pretend like it didn't even exist, it creates a tear. And that tear leaves a hole. So now in your net, instead of just being able to hold the goodness, every day that you drag that net, you're losing some of that goodness too, because there's a hole that wasn't mended. There's a tear or a snag that causes the goodness that you were meant to hold to flow freely out of your net. Forgiveness is like that filter in your net. Forgiveness is the mender. It allows where that tear, that snag has happened, it allows for there to be a mending. It allows for there to be a binding that shores up that hole so that it doesn't cause the goodness to flow freely out of you. So think about that for just a moment, because every negative experience, every negative encounter, every time that you have been hurt, insulted, or offended, if you let it sit, you will end up with holes in your heart, in your mind, in your spirit, in your understanding and perception of yourself, so that you are no longer able to hold the goodness that you were intended to have. That's where the lies creep in that you're not worthy enough, or you're not good enough, or you have to get back at people, or you have something to prove, or now you have to live being obligated to other people. No, that is not forgiveness. And you were made to be whole. That's the beauty of the process of learning to forgive. And as I was thinking about, what context do I have to share about this? What's the most recent experience? What's the most real place that I had to come to for forgiveness? And I was talking to my husband and I was asking, how has forgiveness, the process of forgiveness, served you? And we were just able to talk about how we have grown, because over the 13 years of our marriage, we've had some experiences, some encounters within our marriage, outside of our marriage, at work, with the kids, that have really taught us about the process of forgiveness. And it has blessed us, because when you forgive, you free yourself to be whole. So the things that would seek to bind you, the things that would seek to stifle you or to hold you back, they don't have an opportunity to do that. Because you're allowing the mending of your heart to constantly take place, so that what other people do to you, what other people say to you, what other people bring to you, doesn't change how you see yourself. So, the most recent, and it was probably the most impactful recently, was a disagreement that I had with my sister, my older sister. And during this disagreement, I called her regarding a situation, and she did not like the way that I spoke to her. And because of how I spoke to her, she was offended. And because of that offense, we have now not spoken in almost 2 years. And at first, I wanted to be indignant. I wanted to be self-righteous. No, I had every right to say what I said. That was my thinking in the moment. And I can't believe that she would then go back and do such and such and such. So there was an offense that took place on both sides, because the way that I spoke to her caused her to turn to social media and essentially dishonor me, reframe the situation in a way that was not honorable, that didn't even have to be communicated publicly using social media. But okay, that's the time that we're in. It happens. Some people give full vent to their spirit publicly. Now, what I learned from that moment, after sitting with the Lord, and I use my husband as a sounding board because he's so calm-natured and he's so just zen. If I ever question whether or not there was like right handling, I always go to him. I'm like, hey, this is the situation. This is what happened. What was the fault? What could I have done better? And he said, well, maybe the tone of voice that you used, you could have said it more calmly. You didn't have to be so brash. And he was right. And so I sat with that and I said, I could have said that differently. I could have handled that better. I still could have said and shared the truth, but it didn't have to be so harsh in being shared. And the more and more I sat with it, the more and more I was able to see how I created an offense just with my words. And it was a hard process, y'all. It was a very, very hard process because I love my sister. I would never purposely want to do anything to harm or hurt her. I love her. I love her children. I love her husband. I love her family. But that was a moment that caused me to have to understand, even when you have right intentions, it doesn't mean that you haven't hurt someone. And sometimes we try to justify holding on to our rightness or our own justifications for not forgiving someone or for hurting someone by trying to negotiate the damage or the harm that we've done. Well, what I said wasn't really that bad, or some of us have said this before. I could see forgiving them if they didn't. Or even we say things like, it's the principle of the matter. And that's what the justification is that we use to not forgive people or to keep from having to acknowledge that we may have offended someone. I've done that before. So I sat with it, right? And the Lord just began to tell me, you have to release the offense. You have to release the offense that you felt for how she responded. You have to release her. You cannot hold this and think that you can be whole. Okay. And one hard truth that I had to learn to hold and have is that there is nothing that is unforgivable. Can you wrap your mind around that statement? Because it was really hard for me at first when the Lord said there is nothing that is unforgivable. Oh, okay. Well, why? Why would you say that? And he explained that forgiveness is not for other people. Forgiveness is for you. You free yourself to be whole. You keep your net from being snagged, from having a hole that lets your own goodness flow out when you forgive someone. So, after I released the offense, he told me that I had to apologize. Okay, that's hard. Yeah, I had to apologize. And I called. She didn't answer. So I had to text her because at first, when she didn't answer, I was just going to, okay, well, she didn't answer, Lord. I tried. No, you need to put it on record. You have to communicate with the other person. And that communication has to be on record. You have to say that thing. You have to acknowledge that there was an offense. And for me, because my sister is still alive, it was calling. And when she didn't answer, I had to text. And so I texted and apologized. And I acknowledged that what I did was hurtful. And that I intended good for her moving forward and in the moment. And that I wished her good. So I prayed for her. I prayed for her peace and I prayed for my peace. And in doing that, I got to move forward in the next step of the process of forgiveness. Because forgiveness is a filtering process. It is the only way that you or I or anybody else gets the opportunity to walk in truth, freedom, and wholeness. That is exactly why the Lord says that we are to forgive others just the same way that the Lord God forgives us. Matthew 6 and Ephesians 4:32 both say that. And in order to forgive somebody, you have to release the offense. Whether you were the perpetrator or the receiver, you have to release the offense. And once you release the offense, you have to verbally acknowledge that that thing took place. It could look like an apology or outright stating to somebody that I felt disrespected or dishonored or diminished or unworthy when you did or said this thing. That is important. And if you're the perpetrator, you have to admit that you could have offended somebody, whether intentionally or unintentionally. And that's in Ecclesiastes 7:21 and Matthew 18. You have to know. You have to communicate the understanding. And then when you do that, you get to move into the next step of forgiveness. You get to move through the process of forgiveness. And it is important to know the other person whether the offender or the receiver does not have to be alive. They don't even have to be willing or have a desire to communicate with you for you to do this. Now, at some point, if they are still alive, you do need to be willing to have the conversation. But if you're willing to first release the offense, that's the most important part. Saying, when that person did that, I really felt, or when I did that to that person, I really didn't intend to. Because whether you're the perpetrator or the receiver, you know what the end result was because it shows up in how you engage and interact and experience life after that situation. You know what happened. You know what the end result was. And you have to release the offense behind that. And you have to know that you can't determine how other people respond. What they do, what they say, whether or not they're willing, you don't get to determine that. All you get to determine is what you are willing to do and how you are willing to engage in the process of forgiveness. And they may never, if you are the receiver, they may never apologize to you, ever. You may never hear an apology. But that does not stop you from moving through the process of forgiveness or releasing an offense. And if you were the perpetrator, that person may never, ever want to talk to you again. But that does not prevent you from moving through the process of forgiveness. And if you are the perpetrator against yourself, that does not prevent you from releasing the offense. You are still free to move through the forgiveness process because there is nothing that is unforgivable. And it doesn't just stop there. Because once you have stated that offense and you have acknowledged that this thing happened, now you have to root out the why. Why did this thing happen? What are the emotions that I have attached to this situation? And getting to the root means that you have to confront those feelings, confront those emotions, because they're a result of the hurt or the being wronged or the indignation that you felt or the compulsion that you felt. For me, it was, hey, I thought we shared this similar line of thinking, sister. I thought that we were on the same page about this. And this seems incongruent to what I thought we shared. Why would you say these things? Why would you do these things? These things don't feel like love, or they seem invalidating of not only your self-worth, but mine too. And that hurt. So because I was hurt, when I called her, my tone wasn't loving. And she interpreted that tone as condemnation, as judgment. And I can recognize that. And that's what I apologized for. It was not my intention, no. But when I got to the root of why, then I could see those emotions. I could understand what prompted this engagement, this interaction. And then take a step back and see, okay, well, if I am reflecting on myself and how I handled that, what could I have done differently? How could I have communicated a similar message without using that same tone? How could I have withheld offense? This is what I probably could have done or should have done instead. I should have asked the question. Because when you lead with a statement, typically things don't turn out well. Asking a question helps somebody else to also get to the why of something. So if I had asked a question instead of making a statement, the conversation could have gone differently. If I had prayed for insight before I called her, the conversation could have gone differently. Or if I had just shut my mouth and minded my own business, things would not have gone that way. I should not allow there to be any sense of obligation just because she is my sister. I don't owe anybody anything. All I have to do is love her in truth. And if it would have been true and love to be quiet, I could have done that. And those were hard realities to sit with. And it helped me, rooting out the why helped me to really grapple with not only the emotions, but my own nature that tended to be share your opinion, even if it's not asked for. And I really had to let the Lord work on me to prevent me from doing that, especially with family. If it's not asked for, maybe it's not wanted. And so I had to establish a new mode of operation. If someone asks, then I'll share. But if they don't ask, I'm not going to say a word. So when you root out the why, you have a chance to gain insight and clarity into habits or natures, or where maybe you weren't advocating for yourself right, or maybe the boundaries weren't as clear as you thought they were, or even whether or not your thinking was rooted in trauma. Because sometimes once you get to the root of it and you see the why of it, that's what you're left with. My thinking was fueled by trauma, so I responded this way. I didn't establish a boundary, so another person felt entitled to. I wasn't self-advocating, so this was the result. Right? Let's say you loan somebody some money, whether friend or family, and they don't pay you back, but you see them spending money somewhere else. It would be really easy to be upset about it. But why? Root out the why. Why? Did you give them money out of a sense of obligation? Did you want this person to be someone other than who they showed you they were? Were you not advocating for yourself, so you did not establish any boundaries? And you just gave because you thought that, of course, they would return it back to you, even though you never established that they should, because everybody's motivations are not the same. Everybody's intentions are not the same. So if you root out the why, you can really get to what is happening. It's when you really sit with it, it's like, okay. And Ephesians 4:31 and 32 is what tells us that we have to put away the emotions that would like to fuel our thinking, that would like to hold us hostage in unforgiveness, that would like to put tears in our net so that we can't hold the goodness that we know we deserve. And when you hold on to unforgiveness, you are missing out on the opportunity to receive and to be whole. Because rooting out the why will show you where new boundaries need to exist. It will help you understand what frame of thinking you tend to lean towards and to deal with that. And it will also allow you to move forward in the process of forgiveness so that any patterns that you have or any habits that you've accepted in place of honoring yourself are not what you are fueled by. And once you know how to build better boundaries, then you can make space for the Lord to truly mend your heart. One of my favorite verses is Psalm 147:3, because it reminds me of exactly who the Lord is. The Lord God is a lover of our hearts. It says that he mends the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. He wants to mend your net. He wants you to have a whole and healed heart. Your heart has to be mended, because when your heart is mended, when it is healed, that's the only way that you can hold the goodness that he is intended for you, that your life was made to hold. And when we let him mend our hearts, we have the opportunity to do three things. One, we have the opportunity now to give time the space to tell a new story. When you've released the offense and you've rooted out the why and you build better boundaries, time will tell you the new story. Was that person's apology sincere? Were they genuine in saying they wouldn't do it again and you've noticed it in their nature? Did they accept what you were willing to acknowledge and offer? Or are you giving them enough time and space to process and to be restored to new thinking, to see themselves, to acknowledge themselves? Because sometimes once you've apologized, you have to give that person space. Even if it's a spouse, if your spouse does something or your children do something that are offensive, you have to see those people every day. So when you release the offense and you root out, why do I feel this way? What are the emotions and the feelings that I have tied to this particular soft spot or this particular hurt? Let me root out the why. And then let me build some boundaries around that and reinforce those boundaries. Give them time. People need time and space to grow, to evolve. And time will tell on people. Time will tell the story of whether or not people are genuine, whether or not people are sincere, whether or not people are for you, whether or not people are accepting of right. And time also will tell you if the Lord intends for that relationship to continue to exist, because sometimes time has to separate people so that they see each other better. One challenging thing that I had to recognize in letting the Lord mend my heart was when he said, you send your sister a baby shower present. You send your sister a birthday present. You tell her that you love her. No response from her. No acknowledgement. But I did it because I love her. And that's the third thing that the Lord mending your heart has an opportunity to do. It has the chance to release you from obligation and expectation. You don't owe anybody anything. You don't. Don't believe me? Read Romans 13, 8 and 10. You don't owe anybody anything except to love them in truth and light. And if you're loving somebody in truth and light, and that means I know that I can't spend time with you because you're not careful with your words and I don't want to hold an offense, then you don't spend time. If that means I don't talk to you on the phone because I tend to take burdens away from that conversation and then I feel insulted or indignant when you repeat the same patterns and habits, then you don't talk to them on the phone, or you say, I limit these conversations to 10 minutes. Okay, that's fine. But you don't do it out of obligation or expectation, because you don't determine what people say and do. You can only determine who you choose to be, the process that you're going through for forgiveness, and everything else, let it go. Elsa said that. Let it go. Let it go. That is the beauty of letting the Lord mend you. I love my sister with my whole heart. Continue to pray for her and her family. But I had to release her from the obligation of what I thought a sister had to do or who a sister has to be. And I had to release her from the expectation of ever wanting to talk to me again. She could be absolutely changed by that experience, whether for good or bad. But because I apologized, because I told her that I loved her, and because I was willing to sacrifice my expectation and obligations, there is nothing on my end. There is nothing that I am holding. There is nothing that prevents me from praying for her, from loving her, or from seeing the good in her. Because that process of forgiveness has had its full work. And it was not easy. But it was so beneficial. Because I know that when everything is said and done, there is nothing that can be said that's dishonorable about how I moved after the offense. And that's what the forgiveness process does. It gives you an opportunity to honor yourself in it. You're not seeking vengeance. You're not looking for everybody to prove your rightness, because forgiveness is not demanding. That's why you give people space to grow. That's why you're able to not only give them space to grow, but to reinforce boundaries, and then to release people from expectation and obligation. You don't owe anybody anything. And you have the good that you need when you let it be good. When you let the process of forgiveness have its full work, it blesses you, it builds you, it leaves you better than you were before. And it is so freeing. It is so freeing. So let's take a moment and self-check. Because this has been a lot and we've been here for a minute. So let's breathe. Okay. Is there a myth about forgiveness that has kept you from being free so that you are not carrying hurt and offense? And if it is, are there places in your heart that need mending? Is there a rooting that you can begin to get to the why? What is keeping you from forgiving yourself or from forgiving other people? Are you allowing expectation or obligation to dictate how you filter your experiences, or from being willing to extend forgiveness? Those are not easy questions to ask yourself, but if you really sit with them And if you make your heart receptive to the process and the freedom of forgiveness, you will be forever blessed and forever changed. There is no greater gift than freedom. And one truth to have and hold is that to forgive is the highest form of self-love, because it frees you to see you and to be you in your most whole state of existence, not carrying any burdens, not carrying any obligations or expectations, but to be free, to be you, to see other people and let them be them, and to let the Lord mend and hold the net of your heart so that the goodness that you were made to have does not flow out. You were destined to hear today and to know today that there is a God that loves you so much that he did this very same thing for you. He gave the very best that heaven had to offer so that you could experience the wholeness and the freedom that comes from forgiveness. That is the essence of John 3:16. And that is why we are told to love others, to love and forgive others, even as the Lord loves and forgives us. So when you work through that process of forgiveness, you release that offense, you root out that why, and you let the Lord mend your heart. You are giving yourself the goodness you were made to have and to hold. So start today, because you deserve to be whole. You were made for that. Let your heart be mended and healed, because you deserve to know your worth. Make your moments matter today. Give yourself the goodness that you deserve to live in the light of truth. Don't forget to take into tomorrow the lessons of today. Be gracious, be patient, and be loving to yourself. You got this. You're working it out. You're doing the things. You're listening, you're receiving, you're applying. You are doing the things. And small steps are okay. Be receptive. Be good to yourself. May the peace of Yah be yours today. We'll talk soon. Bye, y'all.